What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the latest news from here in Taipei. Tensions between Taiwan's two main political parties are heating up over investigations into misconduct in civic-led recall campaigns to oust legislators. A protest led by the Kuomintang against those investigations has now drawn scrutiny. Tiffany Wong has more.
Four local leaders of the main opposition Kuomintang now wanted by prosecutors for alleged involvement in signature fraud. It's part of investigations into misconduct in mass recall campaigns in Taiwan. Campaigns sparked by bitter conflict and deadlock in the opposition-controlled legislature. Senior KMT officials, including the party's chair Eric Zhu, called for this protest against the forced potential detention outside the prosecutor's office Thursday night. They say these investigations are unreasonable. Taipei Mayor and KMT member Jiang Wan'an called out what he says is bias for the ruling Democratic Progressive Party within the prosecutor's office.
与其让执政的民进党用不公不义的手段来毁坏台湾，我认为立法院应该推动倒戈。如果赖清德总统因此解散国会，我们就用立法院改选。 对赖清德总统进行一次不信任投票。
On Friday morning, the premier responding to Jiang's calls to oust the cabinet.
发展到今天，人民是否同意是一个重要的议题。至于倒阁，就宪法上而言，行政院是被动的。
A vote of no confidence in the premier would require support from half of the legislature, where opposition parties hold a slight majority. But the legality of Thursday's protest is being called into question, with the Interior Minister calling for an investigation.
我们会把所有的这些跟集会游行法有关，包括是否在禁制区以内，或者是有任何其他的滋扰行为，全部移送由地检署来侦办。
As recall campaigns to oust both KMT and DPP legislators advance, analysts say this political storm has been a long time coming.
This confluence, which the KMT returned to power in the legislature, but does not hold the presidency, but also experienced then successive defeats in all these presidential election campaigns, that I think is what led to its attempts to expand legislative powers last year, then to freeze the Supreme Court, and then to then in fact cut the budget so drastically. And so now we're seeing this play out again electorally in terms of recalls.
The KMT is calling for another rally outside the presidential office on April 26th to call for a vote of no confidence in President Lai Ching-te. And as political parties get more involved in these civic-led recall campaigns, it's a time of reckoning for lawmakers and their parties. Justin Wu and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
New voluntary registration system has been set up for religious and civic groups traveling to China. The government here says this will help protect Taiwanese citizens from persecution, but not everyone is sure that it's needed. Leslie Liao has more.
A hostile foreign force. That's how President Lai Ching-te described China in a speech on national security last month. In that same speech, Lai said he wanted to increase transparency for religious groups traveling to China for exchanges.
内政部也应建立宗教团体等公益组织赴中国交流之揭露制度，以防杜中国的干预与统战。
Many temples in Taiwan share close ties with counterparts in China, and they'll often travel for religious exchanges. But religion is tightly controlled by China's ruling Communist Party. With China intent on taking control of Taiwan, Lai's government says it's concerned about the safety of these types of exchanges.
鉴于赴中国旅行的风险越来越高，113年元旦期间，陆委会接获通报之国人赴中失联、遭留置、盘查或关押者合计71人，未通报之数字可能数倍于此。
Just over a month on from Lai's speech, the Interior Ministry now has a system in place. Religious and civic groups can register their travel plans to China on its website. Participation is voluntary for the public, and its creators say users only need to provide the bare minimum of information.
所以我们这个登录专区最主要的目的就是提供，不管是宗教、人民团体或者是公职人员，如果你有留下这些登录的资讯的话，我们就登录，然后必要性的给予揭露，并不涉及各自的部分。
Around 20 groups have already registered on the website since its launch, but the reception has been mixed.
一般的话都是我们会委托旅行社来办理嘛，旅行社办理的话，在过程来说，它就是会合乎政府的一个手续去承办嘛。我们是很单纯宗教的交流而已。
每个宫庙每个人的声音又不一样，每个人想法又不一样，到时候真的很乱让它很自然的交流，感觉这样是最好的啦。
Currently, only heads of local government have to register their China travel plans with the government. But the ministry says it's encouraging all elected officials to do so. With this new system, worshippers and civic groups can choose whether to let the government know about their movements in China. But whether it can help protect Taiwanese across the strait remains to be seen. Eason Sun and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's economic growth could drop to almost zero this year if U.S. tariffs cause a global recession. That's according to one of Taiwan's leading public think tanks, which says this is a worst-case scenario.
大概比较有可能是在乐观跟一般之间，真的发生这个比较悲观，我们觉得它的几率大概是差不多10到20%。
The new estimates from the Zhonghua Institution for Economic Research were published in light of proposed U.S. tariffs. From worst to best case, the three scenarios predict growth rates of 0.16, 1.66, and 2.85% respectively. Before Donald Trump unveiled his tariff plans, the group estimated up to 3.12% economic growth for Taiwan this year. U.S. President Donald Trump says the U.S. is in trade talks with China and that Beijing has reached out multiple times. That's despite China saying the potential for dialogue lies in Washington's hands. Rosie Graninger reports.
Weeks since the US imposed massive tariffs on imports from China, President Donald Trump has signalled the world's two biggest economies are in talks to end the tit-for-tat hikes.
I would say they have reached out a number of times.
He or they?
Well, the same. I view it very similar. It would be top levels of China. And if you knew him, you would know that if they reached out, he knew exactly. He knew everything about it. He runs it very tight, very strong, very smart. And, yeah, we're talking to China.
The US president adding he would delay a deal on Chinese-owned social media company TikTok until the trade issues with China are worked out. Washington has imposed across-the-board tariffs of 145% on Beijing, with China striking back by raising its own levies on goods from America to 125%. China has not confirmed any talks, only saying they are willing to resume dialogue.
单边加征关税措施完全由美方发起，解铃还需系铃人。我们敦促美方立即停止极限施压。 停止胁迫讹诈，在相互尊重的基础上，与中方通过平等对话解决分歧。
Both countries have also taken non-tariff punitive measures against each other. Beijing has imposed export controls on a range of rare earth minerals and magnets, crucial for the US in manufacturing high-tech products. While Washington is planning to impose fees on Chinese-owned or built ships that dock in the US. The escalating trade war has seen Chinese President Xi Jinping seek closer relations with Asian neighbours. The Chinese leader shored up relations with Vietnam, Malaysia and Cambodia this week during a three-nation trip.
习近平主席这次访问，对目前的形势相当有利，相当有必要。因为目前中国和美国打经济战嘛，对吧？ 我们要把东南亚国家就是发展和把东南亚国家的关系呢搞好。
Trump had a different reaction to Xi's tour, saying it was aiming to, quote, screw the United States. And despite the US president's confidence that a deal can be made with China, his tariff war could be opening up diplomatic options for Beijing, strengthening Xi's hand in any negotiations. Alex Chen and Rosie Graninger for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan tech manufacturing giant Foxconn says their business will be affected by U.S. tariffs, but not as badly as other companies.
不会影响是不可能的，一定会影响。所以我们在4、5年前就开始布局区域化的制造能力，但是因为我们布局的早， 所以相对比较轻。现在这个关税高低，没有人知道最终的结果是什么，那个是最大的问题，这不确定性。
Foxconn also said it would allocate more than $26 million for its electric vehicle subsidiary based in the U.S. state of Ohio. Foxconn is the world's largest contract manufacturer of electronics, making products like Apple's iPhone. The United States is prepared to stop trying to facilitate a Russia-Ukraine peace deal if progress isn't made, quote, within a matter of days.
So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on. This is important, but there are a lot of other really important things going on that deserve just as much, if not more, attention.
Rubio made those comments in Paris a day after speaking with European leaders, including representatives from Ukraine, in what he called positive meetings. Washington and Kyiv have just signed a preliminary agreement, including a minerals deal that would set up an investment fund for Ukraine's reconstruction. Taiwan's been hosting a group of New Zealand parliamentarians this week. Their visit is aimed at sharing expertise and strengthening the bonds between the two island nations. Lauren Padmore reports.
7 New Zealand lawmakers are in Taiwan this week on a 6-day trip to boost bilateral relations. They represent the New Zealand-Taiwan Friendship Group, formed in 2023 to increase trade ties and support stability in the Indo-Pacific. The two island nations have a growing relationship built on shared values and a surprising number of similarities. And both their economies have been shaken up by US President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs.
But we're very great supporters of free trade in New Zealand, like Taiwan. We're a trading nation. I think President Trump is looking for a fair deal, and that is actually not a bad place to start. We need to take as they say, breathe through the nose and wait for a little while and see what happens.
And in defence, the countries share a common concern: China. In February, China sailed naval ships through the Tasman Sea between New Zealand and Australia and launched a live-fire drill.
Live firing exercises in the Tasman Sea with very short notice was dangerous, and I think we would consider it good manners for people to give a lot of warning if they were going to do that. But we do, I want to emphasise, support freedom of navigation.
All these similarities mean New Zealand has become an increasingly vocal supporter of Taiwan. In 2020, the country's Foreign Minister Winston Peters advocated for Taiwan's inclusion in the World Health Organization. A New Zealand Navy vessel sailed through the Taiwan Strait last year, something Taiwan's representative in New Zealand, Joanne Oh, called a welcome sign of friendship.
From our view, as I do believe the policy of the New Zealand government towards Taiwan and China has been consistent, and that what we want to acknowledge here is for the New Zealand government to have voiced the support for shared values, for democracies, human rights, and protection of freedom. And as we talk about this freedom of navigation.
This week's visit is the second made by the Friendship Group. And one of the focuses, Taiwan's Indigenous communities.
One of the interesting things from our visit to Ulai was the similarities around language and I guess some of the cultural components that exist within that. So naturally, as a member of the Labour caucus around the Pacific caucus in my team, I'll be having conversations with colleagues around how we can look to advance some of the issues that are important. The language is very similar in many respects.
Although New Zealand and Taiwan are separated by some 9,000 kilometres, the trip this week showed the two countries have plenty in common. Whether it's defence or Indigenous issues, the two seem determined to learn from each other. Ryan Wu, Ed Moon and Lauren Padmore for TaiwanPlus.
And thank you for joining us here on What's Up Taiwan. Finally, catch the first performance of this traditional Japanese dance troupe in Taipei. They're currently on tour across Taiwan. I'm Eric Al. Take care and have a great weekend.